What I want to talk about now is just a brief overview really of the English and Welsh conveyancing system. Now, you might have noticed this over on my shoulder for those of you watching the live stream. For those of you watching the or listening to the podcast, you can't see it, but it's a picture. You may recognise this picture. You might need to zoom in a bit really if you want to see this. But this is Vale Street in Bristol in December 2020. Now, it happens to be the steepest street in the UK, which is pretty impressive, isn't it? I wouldn't fancy parking my car up there, would you? You'd have to have a good handbrake, otherwise things would go completely Pete Tong, wouldn't they? But this was very famous. Probably heard the story. Banksy, or one of his team, went out there and painted a great piece called the Achoo piece, and it's a picture that you can just about make it out. Somebody sneezing. It's all to do with COVID, I guess. But Banksy's paintings are very, very valuable. People find them on their walls suddenly in Bristol or areas like that, and they're worth a huge amount of money. Anyway, the story was that this particular owner of this property here, you can see this kind of like a Victorian bay-fronted property. This owner of this property had the house on the market and had accepted an offer from somebody, and it was progressing well. People were spending money on surveys and all those good things. Anyway, once Banksy's picture was put there on one evening in December, the following couple of days the vendor mysteriously pulled out of the sale. They didn't really give a reason. I think it was a change of heart or something. And I thought to myself, that's particularly wrong really, isn't it? The pure fact is though that this vendor's house suddenly became worth another $500,000 or million or whatever it was because of Banksy's painting. So if he sold it as he was planning to do, he would have sold the painting to the next owner. And he didn't want to do that, so you can understand. But this kind of kills the whole point about the English and Welsh system, isn't it? Because effectively, this purchaser of this property was gazanged. Have you heard those phrases before? Gazanging, gazundering, and gazumping, they call it. Now, gazanging, you can't make this stuff up, can you? Gazanging is where the vendor just changes their mind and pulls out. So I think her name was Eileen Makin. She gazanged the purchaser, who probably spent a few grand on fees and stuff like that, and time as well. And no repercussions whatsoever because the English and Welsh system allows you to do that. As you know, of course, when you make an offer on a property in England and Wales, it's offer subject to contract, and then chains get put together and everybody starts drawing up their contracts and doing their surveys and applying for their mortgages. Contracts are drawn up by each party, then they're exchanged, and once exchange of contracts occurs, they can't turn back. Well, you can, but you're going to lose a lot of money and get sued for it as well. But anybody up until exchange of contracts can pull out, and they do, and it causes havoc to the whole system. You see, it takes time. Nobody spends any money in England and Wales before offers are accepted. Vendor doesn't spend a lot of money, an energy report maybe on their property, but that's only £100. The estate agent doesn't charge any money until the house is sold. They may pay a few bob for marketing up front, but the vendor hasn't spent anything. The applicant hasn't spent anything before they make an offer either, apart from time. They might have gone to a broker, got a mortgage agreed in principle, but that didn't cost anything. So no money's spent. As soon as the offers are accepted, subject to contract, money then starts to be spent. A lot of money too. Surveys, searches, application fees, all sorts of things get spent. And then when you exchange contracts, you can't then turn back. So people lose a lot of money. Now, Eileen did a gazanging on the poor purchase of this property. You might have heard of gazumping and gazundering. Gazumping is where the vendor gets a better offer. At the moment, of course, the housing market is rising. The vendor 3 or 4 weeks later, once everything's going through, might get a higher offer from somebody else who just waltzes in, offers another 10 grand. So the vendor says, oh, I'll have your offer instead, and pulls out of the first one. That's known as gazumping. Not particularly nice, really. Okay, it's legal, it's not illegal, but it's not particularly nice. Gazundering is where the purchaser turns the table and offers a lower amount of money to the vendor. That could be in a falling market, for example, or it could be that a survey has revealed a lot of defects and they're offering a lower figure. So you've got gazumping, gazundering and gazanging. It's gracious me, as I said, you can't make this stuff up, can you? But of course it's the fault of the English and Welsh system. So what are the ways of solving that? Well, Let's put a few ideas up here for you. You've got England and Wales, which is, I think it's Northern Ireland as well, shares the system where you have to exchange contracts. And once you've exchanged contracts, that's when you can't back out. Well, you can theoretically, but you lose a lot of money. Now, in Scotland, it's very different, and a lot of people reckon that we should adopt the Scottish method, and I kind of believe that as well. I think the Scots have got it right up there, actually. Canny nation, the Scots, very intelligent people, very proud people as well. So that's a good thing, because they devised this system, which is hundreds of years old. The Scots law is hundreds of years old. The Register of Sessions, I think, was the 17th century, where they used to register properties. But in Scotland, they have Scots law. And what happens here is a lot of work's done before contracts are exchanged. They call it concluding the missives. Do you like that word, do you? Concluding the missives. I think it's pronounced that way. It's probably some other pronunciation. Concluding the missives, which is similar. Now, once missives have been concluded, you can't then back out. So it's the same concept as exchanging contracts. But the way the system in Scotland works is quite clever, because the vendor does a lot of work before they put the house on the market. They create a pack, effectively. Now, in this pack, there's a condition report in there, which is a decent survey, which you can rely upon, actually. There's also a lot of legal preparation in there as well. There's almost like a contract drawn up as well. There's all sorts of information about the property in this pack, like a sort of seller's pack. And it means that when you note your interest, there's a phrase they often use up there, when you note your interest, in other words, you've viewed the property, you quite like it, and you're keen to move forward on it, you note your interest, you get sent this pack. So you get to have a look at the survey, you get to have a look at some of the legal aspects, is it freehold, a tenement block, or whatever it is, and it allows you to make a very informed decision whether to go ahead or not. Naturally, you need to have your mortgage kind of agreed in principle as well. But once you've got that, you then put your interest in. There's often sealed bids as well, so they choose the best bidder, if you like, all the interests that have been noted. And people mostly submit their offer without any conditions at all. There's no qualifying offers. So somebody submits their offer and that's it. It's normally offers over in Scotland, but it does depend on the market. So you might offer £220,000 with no conditions. That's your offer. The vendor will look at these offers, pick the one they like, and then missives are then concluded. So it's darn quick. It doesn't have to be quick. So some people submit an offer subject to a survey maybe, or subject to the mortgage being completed. And that, of course, the vendor could accept that if they want to, but they won't conclude missives until all those conditions have been satisfied. So it might stretch the process a little bit. But mostly a vendor will pick somebody that can move very quickly. So a lot of the work's done by the vendor. Applicant does spend a little bit of money, but not really, because the survey's done by the vendor. So they'll get their mortgage agreed in principle, which you should do anyway. It's a good thing to do. So there you've got missives being concluded. So it's a lot quicker. It's a lot quicker. And we wouldn't have this problem. We tried to solve the problem actually a few years back. I don't know if anyone remembers the Home Information Pack, or HIP as they call it. It was brought in by Gordon Brown. Do you remember Gordon Brown? He didn't have a very long career as a Prime Minister, did he? I think the financial crash killed that. But he introduced the Home Information Pack, or maybe Tony Blair did. And the whole point about the HIP was that it was a pack that vendors would create, very similar to the Scottish system, really. It had a survey in there, it had an energy report and various other legal information to help you buy the property. But it never really took off. It just died, really, because it was going to cost the vendors over £1,000, and vendors didn't want to pay it because they felt they couldn't do so. Makes you think, doesn't it? If you're serious about selling, spending £1,000 on some of these things isn't actually a bad thing. It stops people gazanging. It would have stopped old Eileen pulling out, wouldn't it, if she forked out £1,000? But then again, £500,000 for a Banksy is pretty much a big draw, really. You might well have done it yourself as well. So you've been Banksy, didn't you? I think at the end of the day. But so you've got gazanging, gazundering, gazumping. Have you got gazbankseed? Gazbankseed? It doesn't quite work, but you know what I mean. She pulled out as a result of it. So, moral of the story, really, English and Welsh law is okay, but there's a lot of problems. There really is. The Scots law, maybe that's what we need to have. And that's the end of that session. Bye.